Okay, welcome, U.S. Virgin Islands chess players, youth team, coaches, everyone. All these games I show on the FIDE Online playlist, guys, are for everyone. Um, Everyone to look at so that we can all improve our chess through these virtual online analyses brought to you all by myself, Colin Heim. These are all my online games from my Android. Right, so guys, in this playlist, all over 30 videos here, they are all played from my handheld device, and I am not using a computer. I am not using an engine, just natural games played with one hand. Okay. Right, so there's another game here from the Rapid Arena that I wanted to show, and this demonstrates a good d4, d5 game and how to play with black pieces. Queen's pawn opening, and my opponent here with white pieces from Serbia, Samir Dervisevic. He's a good player. He's good. I'd reckon somewhere he's maybe about 1700, maybe 1800, but a good chess player. A good chess player. Maybe higher. Maybe somewhere better. Anyway, the ratings did not reflect the game played here. But let's demonstrate now how to play this with black pieces, guys. d4, d5. Let's go. Merry Christmas Eve, by the way. Knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to f4, and bishop to f5. So we have a reverse Italian game, a reverse Gioco Piano on the board. Reverse Gioco Piano because we see that now it's the king side that's developed in the Italian structure instead of the queen side, right? So it's almost like a queen's pawn reverse Gioco Piano. a3 now played by my opponent, not letting the knight anytime jump up here to get to c2 square. So good prophylaxis, future defense, good development. Knight to f6 now played by myself, so two horses there on the main line. e3, knight h5. That e3 puts the trap now to the bishop. It says, guys, the engine recommends that the best move, yes, is just bishop to g3, but you can also play bishop to, you can play bishop to, like, e4 here, e5 here, for example. Anyway, just dropping the bishop back, my opponent. And you don't have to capture here on the spot, guys. You just want to continue development here for black. It's not like, oh, there's the dark squared bishop, let's get going. No, you want to develop. So e6 now, played by myself, and bishop to d3. Okay, so we can relax now because bishop to d3 is basically saying, well, okay, the best move is captures, and queen captures, and then the game can continue. So this is exactly what happened. So just an early exchange here from white, and the queenside knight has not been developed yet, but as we see, the dark squared bishop is going to get in the game and be a very vital piece now for Team Black to convert a winning game. So now knight captures on g3, guys. So after that small exchange there on d3, now going for the knight-bishop exchange. And now white has an open h-file. Yeah, so white has an open h-file now. You can go up and down this h-file. It's open. Now queen f6 played by myself now, putting pressure on the d4 pawn. That's why queen f6 was played. Now knight from b to d2. Guys, find another move for this position for white. The engine doesn't like castles here. The best move in this position, guys, is just knight to c3. Knight to c3 is the best move in the position. And then maybe after long castles, which is best, maybe white could even short castles or long castles, or just get the knights going. Instead, we saw, guys, knight from b to d2, so the game continued. Black has a dark squared bishop, and there are double pawns on the g-file for Team White. Okay, so g6 now, getting ready to fianchetto the dark squared bishop finally. Rook castle queenside, rook castle queenside. Okay, all right. Good job, guys. Move 12, knight to b3, and e5. e5. So find the best move in this position now, guys, for Team White, after I give everyone a couple of seconds. Find the best move for Team White. 4.5 minutes in now. This is move 12. Find the best move. Well, queen to b5 was played here by Team White, but that is not really recommended. The best move is just to capture, right? And then after black is basically forced to capture here, white's winning a pawn. Well, not really winning a pawn, guys. It'd be nice if white was winning a pawn. But anyways, that's what we saw in the game. That's not what we saw in the game. Instead, we saw queen to b5, queen to b5, and e4. So knight from f to d2 and a6. Queen to e2, h5. f3, rook to e8. Yes, sliding the rook now over to give more protection to the e4 pawn that was pushed for black. Rook from d to f1, e takes on f3, rook takes on f3, queen to e7. Rook from h to f1, now doubling up on the f-file. So what do you guys think? Does white look better here or black? I think white looks a little better here. I think white has better rooks. I think despite, as we mentioned, having double pawns on the g-file, white has good counterplay and good compensation for the positional compensation. So f5 was played now by myself, knight to c5, queen to g7, putting more coverage to the d4 pawn. Perhaps, maybe not allowing something like e4 now for white. It's highly unrecommended. That just gives up the center pawn. Now queen to d3 played by my opponent, and yes, if you guys found the move bishop captures on c5 is correct. After pawn captures and then now d4, so gaining more coverage in the center now as the queen is on g7. Wow guys, g7 was a great square to put that queen, by the way. It was a great move, finding queen g7. So after we saw bishop into c5 and d into c5 and now pushing g4, e into d4, and now queen captures. Right, so like as we mentioned, it was really good having that queen on the long diagonal, the g7 diagonal. And now this is basically just a forced line. Queen into d4, knight takes. And after the rook swings over to d3 now, we have knight e2 throwing a check at the white king. And in this position, guys, black is up a pawn. Or is black up a pawn? Well, maybe it's like theoretically up a pawn because these double pawns really don't look good. This backwards pawn here on c2, another backwards pawn here on g2 and g3. So anyways, let's continue. So king to b1 after the check, and positionally, given the pawn structure, yes, black looks better. Rook to d8, and now rook into d8. Not recapturing with the king here, guys, just getting the rook swung over now to attack the knight on d2, okay? And after knight into f3 and f4, now saying, well, you can capture, but the knight's going to recapture. We didn't see that in the game, guys. Instead, we just saw my opponent attacking the knight, which was a mistake, and now there's a free pawn. So as we mentioned, guys, in this position, just captures. Maybe the game can continue now with now knight to d4, and, well, okay, maybe not knight to d4. Now you can defend the g1 pawn, and now you can maybe either start pushing the h pawn, or, yeah, you can. Unfortunately, you can't play rook to d2. Maybe rook to h8, and now the king can come up, and now we can start playing a chess endgame here. Instead, just conceding the g3 pawn, yeah, and then rook to e6, rook to g8, rook to e5. Right, rook to g8 was good now because it just puts more coverage on the g6 pawn, not allowing white to capture. Rook to e5, knight f5, rook e6, and it was in this position after king to d7 that my opponent, Semir Dedivisevic from Bosnia, resigned. And it's strange because what could one plausible, was something feasible that white could play here? Not a king move, not a pawn move. But what is the engine like here? Well, it says virtually that there are no good moves in this position for white, except for captures. Well, I guess now, and oh, right. There's a nice little discovered fork here. Okay, so I'm still really liking this for black because there's, well, yeah, if knight captures and king captures here, and start walking it up the board here. The knight's under attack and still can't defend the pawn. Okay, it could go somewhere like this, and now this pawn's under attack. This would be like a theoretical endgame, guys. That's a check. Going back over here. It says it's best just to take. And now black is down a pawn in that endgame. So it was a good continuation for white. Perhaps my opponent just felt a little overwhelmed. I guess you didn't have to resign here. I guess it was best just to capture, and then there's a nice as we mentioned, there's a nice little fork there on e5. That's a nice move, by the way. Probably keeps white in the game. Probably keeps white in the game, as we just demonstrated. But there's still like, well, okay, that pass pawn's going to drop now too, after checks this. And it'll be 3-3, and it'll be drawing because this g2 pawn will fall. So maybe should have been like a drawing endgame in theory, or in actuality, just given the nice move order. Anyway, my opponent resigned. I wanted to show that game because this middle game after long castles and long castles was very interesting. It was a very nice pool of play. Knight b3, we saw e5, and black really pushing for the center now. If your opponent gives you a chance to push your pawns in the center with either white or black, you guys should do it at all costs, because it's going to not really create weaknesses in your back rank, but it's just going to control and cement the center, and that's what you want to do in your middle games. So I thought this was all nice with h5, f3, rook e8, rook from d to f1, queen to e7, more coverage, f5, knight c5, and queen to g7 was good too. I really like this position. I thought that black maybe had some problems here, but after bishop into c5, I think I'm a little comfortable here after takes. As we mentioned, guys, in the position, it was probably not best to, well, it is best to captures. Saw queen captures, knight captures, and I think this is good. I think this is a nice endgame. I like the pawns better for black, and maybe I could have played this a little better. Was knight to e2 the best move in the position? No, it says just going back to c6 was best and just defending, and then maybe going after that back rank. How about just like maybe doubling up now, doubling up on the e file perhaps. It says the knight should go to f6. I like kind of doubling up here maybe. Who knows? Maybe getting the king involved. Anyway, guys, we went through a lot of virtual analysis today. That was a nice 12.5-minute virtual tutorial. Thank everyone for participating, and hope you guys got a lot out of it. Should have got a lot out of it as usual. And see everyone on the other side with much more material from the FIDE Online playlist, the World Chess server, from your hosts, with more information on how to improve your chess games online and over the board. Thanks, guys. Signing off for now. And as per normal, see everyone on the other side.